Welcome back, everyone. You are turning into another deep dive explainer right here from your absolute favorite independent USA gossip and pop culture news desk. I'm your host, and let me tell you, it has been a wild morning. Look, if you turn on the mainstream networks right now, the Suits, the morning shows, and those red carpet vultures have literally spent their entire morning obsessing over the superficial stuff. They're talking about designer gowns, the flash bulbs, the celebrity plus ones who looked at who, but honestly, we do not care about that. Here at the Independent Desk, we dig way, way deeper. We want the real story. We are actively stripping away all that paparazzi madness because we want to look at something far more foundational. Today, we are pulling back the velvet curtain on the raw, insider secrets of true, undeniable creative mastery. We are, of course, talking about Taylor Swift's absolutely monumental 2026 induction into the Songwriters Hall of Fame. Now, the glossy magazines, they can tell you who wore what on the red carpet, but we want to know exactly how she actually got to that podium. How does someone navigate the absolute cutthroat madness of global megastardom, outlast the industry titans who literally tried to end her career, and still maintain the grounded, singular focus required to write the songs that completely define an entire generation? Well, today is your lucky day because we are breaking down the exclusive, highly guarded speech she gave to a room full of music executives. We're decoding her notoriously private creative process and pulling out the exact masterclass lessons she laid out for the industry. So grab a coffee, get comfortable, because we are getting into the real insider receipts today. Okay, let's dive right into this with a number, 14. Now, 14 is a number that completely and totally subverts every single expectation you might have about the timeline of musical genius. I mean, think about it for a second. What were you doing at 14? What is the average 14-year-old doing? Usually, they are just trying to figure out how to survive the brutal, awkward social hierarchy of middle school, right? They're worrying about who to sit with at lunch, or stressing out over a freshman year biology pop quiz, or trying to figure out how to talk to their crush. Well, at that exact same age, while the rest of us were doing that, Taylor Swift had already secured a massive, highly coveted publishing deal on Nashville's legendary Music Row. No joke. She wasn't some manufactured industry plant cooked up in a boardroom by executives. She wasn't handed a perfectly pre-written pop hit by a team of 50-year-old Swedish producers. Absolutely not. She was actively sitting in professional writing rooms with seasoned, battle-hardened veteran songwriters, bringing her own deeply personal material to the table. This number, 14, is literally the absolute foundation of everything we are about to discuss today. It proves that way before the sold-out stadium tours, the high-profile celebrity relationships, and the endless tabloid headlines that we cover so often, there was just a fiercely determined teenager with an acoustic guitar and a work ethic that legitimately terrified adults twice her age. And that incredibly early start on Music Row brings us to a frankly shocking revelation from her induction speech. Amidst a room full of industry veterans, heavyweights, and executives, she stood up there and made a confession that left people stunned. She said, "Songwriting was the easiest thing I ever did." Now, you really have to pause and think about the context of her life for the past 23 years to understand why that is such a wild, heavy statement. Think about what she has endured. She has navigated the absolute chaos of mega fame. She has faced the complete and utter loss of her personal privacy, enduring stalkers, security threats, and paparazzi helicopters circling her house. We all know about the massive ego wars of the music industry, the public feuds, the stolen masters, the backroom deals that tried to strip her of her life's work. We've seen the relentless dogpiling of doubt from chronically online critics and rival fan bases absolutely desperate to see her fail. She had to learn how to entertain crowds of 80,000 screaming fans a night, memorize complex choreography, navigate brutal legal battles, and fiercely protect her own sanity through painful, highly publicized trial and error. All of that was incredibly, agonizingly hard. But the actual act of writing the songs, sitting down with a notebook and a piano, she described that as natural. It was an instinctual ease. Her craft remained her one true, untouchable sanctuary when the rest of the world was spinning completely out of control. Chapter 1. Making Hall of Fame History, the 2026 induction. Now, what's really interesting about these metrics is the sheer, unprecedented scale of her 23-year career. Listen, the 2026 induction wasn't just another flashy award show meant to drum up television ratings or sell ads. No, this was a true coronation by her peers. By 36 years old, she became the youngest woman inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame by nearly a full decade. A decade. The numbers on this are genuinely staggering, guys. We are talking about 69 songs in the top 10. That is absolutely bananas. That is enough hits to literally fill the set lists of 3 different legacy artists. And, naturally, 13 number 1 hits. Because, of course, the universe aligns to give her exactly 13, her famous lucky number, right? You literally can't make that up. But here's the thing. These aren't just empty statistics pumped up by algorithmic playlists or fake bot streams. They are the undeniable, rock-solid receipts of a 23-year career built entirely on the back of a pen and a guitar. It's a level of sustained cultural dominance that the modern music business, frankly, has never seen before. And given the fractured, hyper-fast state of media today, they might literally never see it again. But okay, let's get into some of the behind-the-scenes industry gossip that we absolutely love here at the desk. So her introduction at the ceremony was done by none other than legendary filmmaker Steven Spielberg. Honestly, watching a Hollywood heavyweight step up to introduce a pop country songwriter makes a ton of sense when you realize how his expansive world building inspired her own eras. But Spielberg didn't just casually show up to this dinner because he had nothing better to do. Swift revealed this fascinating, super exclusive anecdote that she had originally hesitated to even ask him to introduce her. Why? Because Spielberg had a massive, highly anticipated blockbuster film called Disclosure Day coming out at literally midnight that very night. She actively tried to give him an out, assuming the crazy Hollywood scheduling and the red carpet press junkets for his own movie would make it impossibly difficult for him to attend a music industry dinner in a completely different city. But Spielberg's wife, the legendarily effervescent actress Kate Capshaw, chimed in and just completely shut that hesitation down with a profound truth. She told Taylor, "Good and true things are easy." So Spielberg showed up anyway, completely ignoring the chaos of his own massive premiere. And Swift adopted Kate's profound words as the thematic anchor for her entire approach to her art. It's so beautiful when a connection is real, when the respect is mutual, and when a song is painfully honest. All the surrounding logistical nightmares, the PR schedules, and the industry red cape just kind of miraculously fade away. Moving on to Section 2, the instinct for songwriting, raw talent, and early years. Let's move to the timeline and see how this all builds, because this evolution is rapid. Before the industry battles, the intense media scrutiny, and the heavy weight of a billionaire pop star legacy, there was just a child's raw instinct to intensely observe the human condition. Seriously, Swift was essentially an amateur psychologist way before she was ever a global superstar. She was endlessly fascinated by what makes people tick. Look at this early childhood era. Her parents would drive her home from the local movie theater, and she'd be in the backseat belting out the songs from Disney movies. But she was already instinctively changing the lyrics and the melodies to be about her own very small, very dramatic life. Then at age 12, she learns just 3 basic chords on a guitar. Just 3! And she immediately leverages them to write her first original song. But here is where the story gets crazy. Her tween years. Her family makes the immense, frankly terrifying financial and social sacrifice to uproot their entire lives. They leave behind everything they knew in Pennsylvania to relocate down to Nashville, Tennessee. They basically bet the entire family farm on her talent so she could hone her craft in the songwriting capital of the world. Can you imagine the pressure? But that insane gamble paid off when she secured that first publishing deal at exactly 14. Now, I need to make a very, very clear distinction here, guys. Instinctual does not mean effortless. When Swift said songwriting was easy for her earlier, she absolutely did not mean it lacked grueling, sweat-inducing hard work. During her speech, she painted this incredibly funny and vivid picture of herself obsessing over the internal rhyme schemes for the third line of a second verse. She said it haunted her relentlessly. It haunted her to the point where she was actually getting aggressively called out by her high school math teachers right in the middle of class. Imagine being that teacher for a second. You're yelling at a teenager for zoning out during algebra, having literally no idea that teenager is mentally miles away, actively building sonic landscapes and agonizing over lyrical puzzles that would eventually make millions and millions of dollars. So yes, the core drive to create was deeply instinctual, but the actual execution of those songs, that required a grueling, obsessive, almost maddening level of daily effort. Chapter 3. Mastering the Craft, the Full-Time Vocation. This is where the teenage prodigy officially turns into a hardened, unstoppable professional. We're talking about her early days cutting her teeth on Music Row. By this point, she had already written over 100 songs completely by herself in her bedroom. But now she was stepping into windowless studios to co-write with absolute heavy hitters. I'm talking legends like Liz Rose, Troy Burgess, Hillary Lindsey, Robert Ellis Orlangelo, the Warren Brothers, and Brett James. And she made a very conscious, highly calculated decision right from the jump. She absolutely refused to be treated like a baby. She treated songwriting like a full-time, blue-collar vocation. Think about how insane it is for a teenager to show up to a room full of 50-year-old Nashville veterans with her literal high school backpack, armed with what she called a metaphorical Mary Poppins bag of hooks. She would rigorously pre-write her concepts to 50 or 75% completion before she ever even stepped foot in the session. She kept these running, obsessive lists of her favorite vocabulary words. She developed a deep, intense fixation on alliteration and juxtaposition. And get this, if her own high school crushes weren't giving her enough dramatic material to work with, she would literally put a movie on, pause a random scene, and force herself to write a song from every single character's perspective, even the villain. And that specific exercise of pausing movies and writing for the villain, that taps directly into a massive psychological concept she discussed in her speech, the self-constructed justification system. It's the internal logic that every single person or character uses to decide what choices they condone in themselves as fair and right. It's this stark, brilliant realization that nobody wakes up and decides to be the bad guy. Everyone genuinely thinks they are the righteous hero of their own story, operating under their own specific set of rules. By deeply understanding and essentially weaponizing this concept, Swift added an immense layer of empathetic depth to her songwriting toolkit. It's exactly why her famous breakup anthems or character-driven narratives resonate so fiercely with all of us. She doesn't just lazily write about what happened, she literally climbs into the psyche of the subject and captures the nuanced, sometimes deeply flawed internal logic of why people do the terrible, beautiful, or incredibly messy things they do. Moving on to Chapter 4, Trusting Your Creative Intuition, the Craig Wiseman Pitch. Okay, this brings us to one of the most revealing pieces of insider gossip from her early career, and guys, it is an absolutely phenomenal story of a young savant going up against a veteran. Picture this room. A young Taylor Swift steps into a writing session with Craig Wiseman. Now, if you know anything at all about the Nashville music scene, you know Craig Wiseman is royalty. He's a legendary writer, a massive hitmaker, an absolute giant in the industry. Swift walks in equipped with 5 semi-formed songs, completely terrified but incredibly excited because she was pitching to one of her actual real-life heroes. She decides to lead her pitch with a song that she truly deeply believed was something profoundly special. It was almost completely done, just missing a few lines in the bridge. Filled with all this nervous anticipation, she grips her acoustic guitar, she plays it, and she sings her absolute heart out for him. And then comes the brutal reality of the music business, rejection. Wiseman very kindly, very politely told her that he thought it was okay, but he just didn't really get it. He casually passed on her absolute favorite idea and asked to hear the other songs she brought in his direction. Just imagine the crushing weight of that moment for a young teenager desperately trying to prove herself to a musical legend. But right here is where the genius truly lies, and what separates a fleeting one-hit wonder from a Hall of Famer. She said, finishing that song that night was me trusting my instincts as a writer. She absolutely refused to let the polite rejection of an industry titan kill her vision. Think about it. A lesser artist would have immediately tossed those lyrics into the nearest trash can, just assuming the veteran expert knew better than they did. But instead of throwing that rejected idea away, what did she do? She packed up her guitar, went home after that session, locked herself in her bedroom, and finished the bridge completely on her own, regardless of his feedback. She possessed this fierce independence and a staggering, unbreakable belief in her own internal compass. And are you ready for this? What was that rejected song? That song was Love Story. Boom. Let that sink in for a second, guys. Love Story, one of the best-selling singles of all time. A culture-defining mega hit that literally single-handedly catapulted her from being a country radio darling into global, untouchable superstardom. A track that generated untold millions of dollars and permanently shifted the entire landscape of pop music. And it was initially passed on by one of the best, most experienced writers in Nashville just because he didn't get it. She delivered this incredible punchline during her Hall of Fame speech with this perfect knowing smirk, definitively proving that her human intuition, her pure gut feeling about what a teenager crying in her bedroom needed to hear, was absolutely right all along. No way. That is legendary. And this brilliantly illustrates the massive, gaping divide in the modern music industry today. On one side of the coin, you have the A&R executives in their corner offices, completely obsessed with metrics, data analytics, TikTok algorithms, and now AI, desperately trying to mathematically predict what a computer thinks will trend for 15 seconds. But on the other side, you have pure, raw, human intuition. Swift made a passionate, urgent plea for creators to trust the thousands of hours of lovingly crafted human intuition to identify the ideas that naturally sparkle and linger in the mind. She even directly pointed to a rising young artist named Somber, sometimes known in the scene as Shane, as living proof that the kids are all right.
She was saying that independent, human-driven artistry is the true future of the business, and that nobody, absolutely nobody, needs an AI chatbot to write a record that actually moves the needle.
Section 5, Sensitivity and Durability, the balancing act of a creator. This flows right into the raw advice she offered directly to those rising artists like Somber, really highlighting the brutally harsh reality of the business today. Because let's face it, it is a landscape filled with chronically online haters, literal robots posing as angry people, and cynical critics who build their entire brands on tearing young, vulnerable creators to shreds. Think about it. How do you manage the ultimate creator's paradox? On one hand, you must cultivate radical sensitivity. Songwriters are inherently supposed to let it all in, feeling every minor slight and major heartbreak deeply, almost to the point of near delusion, just so they can sit down and write a devastating 10-minute coming-of-age song about a forgotten winter scarf, right? But on the exact same hand, you must develop ironclad durability. You have to harden yourself to the brutal elements of fame. You have to wear a heavy suit of armor against the paparazzi and the tabloids to protect your sanity, your self-worth, and your singular vision. Remaining a wide-open wound for your art, while wearing a bulletproof vest for the public, is an absolutely agonizing tightrope walk. To explain exactly how she manages this insane paradox, she made a hilarious and hard pivot to pop culture, pulling out a quote from the massive hit TV show Yellowstone. Kevin Costner's gravelly patriarch, John Dutton, tells his son, "You build something worth having, somebody's going to try to take it." Now, obviously, Dutton was talking about protecting a sprawling cattle ranch in Montana from corrupt land developers, but Swift uses this exact mentality as a powerful metaphor for the music industry. The moment you build a creative vision, the moment you secure your peace of mind, reach the top of the charts, and create something genuinely beautiful, there will always be forces out there actively trying to tear it down. Always. Whether it's greedy label executives, rival fan bases launching coordinated smear campaigns, or tabloid journalists looking for a cheap clickbait headline, you have to be fiercely prepared to guard your territory. So, the crucial point is how you actually filter all of that relentless noise. We all know how toxic the internet can be, right? Well, you take what's constructive, you leave out what's violently damaging. Simple as that. Swift explained her current bulletproof mindset on negative feedback. She remains totally unfazed by it because she knows exactly where she stands regarding her own work. She realizes that if you make anything awesome, someone is going to say horrible things about it or twist your lyrics to mean something malicious. True, detailed, singular art is simply not meant to be digested and metabolized by everyone, everywhere, all the time in the exact same way. Some people are just going to hate it, and you know what? That is completely fine. Accepting that harsh fact is exactly what gives a creator the ultimate freedom to just put their head down and keep making the work. Let's move into our final chapter, Chapter 6, A Lasting Musical Legacy, The Fan Connection. Because after more than 2 decades in the blistering spotlight, what truly matters to her isn't the trophy sitting on a shelf, and it isn't the record-breaking stadium gross stats. It's the fans. She spoke so beautifully about the exquisite happenstance of meeting fans exactly where they are in their messy, chaotic lives. We're talking decades of multi-generational listening here, guys. We have parents who cried to our albums 20 years ago, now driving their own kids to school listening to those exact same tracks. Love Story, the exact song that the legendary executive rejected, is now the ultimate undisputed soundtrack to literally thousands of weddings across the globe. She even mentioned the wonderfully quirky, chaotic ways her music travels globally, letting out a knowing chuckle about hearing of fans doing some viral, mistranslated online dance to what they excitedly call the fate of Olia, or massive international crowds confidently belting out the lyrics to Opalate in their own beautifully different accents due to translation quirks. And of course, the exhausted, sleep-deprived parents using the sweeping bridge of Enchanted just to get their newborn baby to finally stop crying at 3 a.m. These magnificent, wildly unscripted real-life expeditions are the true legacy. Her hyper-personal prose and heartache literally became the vital underscore for millions.
It all comes back to a core mission. As she perfectly put it, our goal is to elicit that glint of recognition in another human being. Think about how profound that is. When someone cuts through the absolute deafening noise of everyday life, hears a melody you crafted in a windowless room, and blurts out, "I love this song," that is the ultimate victory. Because in that split second, something that felt so intimately good and true to the isolated writer feels exactly as good and true to the listener holding the steering wheel. And when that lightning in a bottle connection happens, suddenly all the grueling studio sessions, the vicious industry battles, and the relentless critics fade into total insignificance. The grueling work of songwriting once again becomes magically easy.
So, I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on today. How can you apply this exhausting but totally necessary blend of radical sensitivity and ironclad durability to protect your own creative craft today?
Whether you are an aspiring songwriter moving to Nashville, a video creator fighting the algorithm, a journalist, or an entrepreneur launching a new brand, we all face that same impossible balancing act in the modern arena. Take a page directly from Swift's masterclass. Always carry your Mary Poppins bag of ideas. Never shy away from the grueling behind-the-scenes work. Fiercely trust your own human intuition even when the so-called experts in the suits tell you they don't get it, and build your armor thick enough so you can protect the beautiful things you create from those who want to tear it down. Thank you so much for joining me at the Independent Desk today for this deep dive explainer. Keep creating, keep your guard up, don't let the vultures win, and I will absolutely see you right back here on the next one.